Welcome, survivors, seekers, and thrivers. I'm your host, Shari Leigh Roberts, psychic medium, energy healer, and living proof that you can transform your pain into power. Each episode, we dive into trauma healing, developing your intuitive gifts, and reclaiming your life. Get ready for real stories, deep wisdom, and a little laughter along the way.
Welcome. I am proud to have Russell Van Brocklen here with me today. Russell, welcome. Your story of being dyslexic really touches many. And they are one of my brothers is dyslexic, and I saw him at about a thing third grade. Go from struggling, just working, get failing, everything to getting help, and now today and then Ben and has gone on to do incredible things. So, welcome. I appreciate you being here. If you would start out by sharing the that you were when it was finally determined that this is what was holding you back.
Thanks for having me. And I'm glad your brother you said he was diagnosed when he was in third grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's what's really important. I'm just going to use American data because I'm most familiar with that. But generally in the States, from kindergarten through third grade, you learn to read. From fourth grade on, you read to learn. So what everybody clearly needs to understand is that you really want to try to diagnose dyslexia for when you're 5, okay? And then use really well-designed intervention programs so that the dyslexic student is at or at least close to grade level by the end of third grade. If you pass your reading and writing exam at the end of third grade, you're generally going to be okay. If you wait to fourth and later, it gets horrible. So what typically happens if you want to know where to go or learn more about the general process of dyslexia, this is the top book in the field. It's called Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz from Yale. And just so you know, this is dyslexia. Do you see how the back part of my brain has next to no neuroactivity, but the back part of a general brain has just a tremendous amount of neuroactivity?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now look at the front part of the brain. Do you see how my brain has 2.5 times the neuroactivity?
Yes.
Okay. That's the
Yes.
secret. So for what this is telling us, and this is what everybody in my field missed. It's right there. This came out 22 years ago for the first edition. Why focus on the back part of the brain when we got next to nothing going on, where our classmates are going just massive neuroactivity? But the front part of our brain is 2.5 times overactive. I decided to break with my field and to focus on that. All right. And that, according to Yale, does two things. It's word analysis followed by articulation. Now, people ask me generally how I got started in this. I'm going to show you how I use that overactive part to literally change the field of dyslexia for highly motivated, intelligent 16 to 18-year-old high school students. I went to college with a first grade reading and writing level. I went through college with a first grade reading and writing level. And then I finally, in the late 90s, wanted to figure out how government worked. I didn't want to take a class. I wanted to know firsthand. So I signed up for the New York State Assembly Internship Committee. I went in and they looked at my neuropsych evaluation, or I said, I have a first grade reading and writing level. And they said, this is not going to work. So they pulled me out of the legislative office building, put me in the Capitol, the Majority Leaders Program and Counsel's office, because they had 3 administrative assistants who could help turn my horrendous writing into something presentable for memos and interagency things that I had to write occasionally.
Yeah.
So then for the academic portion, I gave a very long presentation instead of a report, because we had to do a big report for the academic portion. Very standard accommodation. Went on for hours. At the end, they recommended 15 credits of A- to the political science department of the State University of New York Center at Buffalo. They don't have to take it. They just normally do, or they might make a small adjustment. They didn't like my accommodations that were made by our legislature. They didn't like them. So they said, well, because we don't like your accommodations, instead of 15 credits of A-, here's your 15 credits of F. Do you have any idea what that does to a transcript?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wiped me out. So I got sick of this. I'm like, this is the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back. I'm done with the discrimination. So I wanted to solve reading and writing for everybody who's dyslexic. But I didn't know how to read and write. So I asked my professors, where do I go in grad school to force me to learn to read and write? And they kind of joked, law school. So I went and I audited 2 law school classes. I went to see Professor Warner, who was a dyslexic law professor for decades. And people kind of didn't expect a dyslexic who can't read and write to show up to law school where you have to read and write more than anybody. So I walk in. This is what I learned later. Dyslexics, those with ADD and ADHD, which is essentially for treatment purposes like a mild form of dyslexia, we don't do well in undergrad, in kindergarten through college. But once we walk into grad school, we own the place day one or soon thereafter. Why? Because there's this thing called a speciality that we're really good at. And then grad school is all about that speciality. So we just excel. That's hitting our 2.5 times overactive. So Professor Warner calls on me. They use the Socratic method. If you want to know more about it, there's a famous movie called The Paper Chase. in the 70s.
Yep. Mhm.
So he calls on me. He crushes people. You don't know the answer. He keeps asking you questions until he embarrasses you enough, then he moves on to the next victim. The idea is to compel you to learn how to argue back as quickly as possible. That didn't
Yeah.
happen to me. He called on me. I answer back. Then he starts trying to pounce on me from different angles. Everything organized itself for the first time, and I can see going forward. And I answer back instantaneously. So he gets a little snarky. I get a little snarky back. Within a minute or so, I'm leaning forward and I'm starting to yell at him. He's leaning forward, yelling at me. He's trying to put me down. 1 minute goes by, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. We're just going back and forth. I can't beat him. He can't beat me. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Finally, he said, Russell, you couldn't be any more correct. In the interest of time, I have to move on. My classmates who graduated that I kept in contact with, they still, even after decades of practicing, they still can't do that. Not with a professor. Okay? This is the
Yeah.
advantage of dyslexia. I learned to read within a month. I learned to write within a couple of years. All right. Then I wanted to show what I did to everybody. So
Yeah.
I wanted the New York State government to pay for my research, and people said impossible. My professor said they can't do that. Well, finally, after a number of years and going through a lot of pre-work with everybody in New York State that mattered, I was funded for a multi-year study. I wanted to see what I could do with the best, the most motivated, the most intelligent, just to see what I could do with the super kids. I went back to my old high school, Averill Park Central School District. They picked their best teacher, Susan Ford. These were 16 to 18-year-olds reading and writing as if they were 12. One class period a day for about 180 sessions. At the end, they scored in the average range of entering graduate school students. They all went on to college, all graduated, GPA, grade point averages of 2.5 to 3.6, no accommodations, cost the state less than $900 a kid. That's how I got started.
Okay. Tell us more detail how you did that. I mean, I want to know details.
Okay. Well, it all came down to, again, this is the book Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywood, second edition. This is just the current one that I have. The original one came out in 2003. As you can see, again, that massive overactivity in the front part of the brain,
Yeah.
that's it. So I focus, that's word analysis followed by articulation. So when I looked at what instrument I wanted to use, I used the graduate records exam analytical writing assessment, analytical articulation. To me, that was the same thing. All right.
Okay. Mhm.
So I wanted to activate that front part of the brain. The other thing is I cheated. I only use this on the most intelligent, the most motivated students, and I got their best special ed teacher. So what else did I do that allowed me to do this? Well, after they were selected, I went and I asked the students, and I said, I said, I know your secret. And they kind of freaked. What do you mean? I said, it started around third grade, give or take a year. You were about ready to move on to the next grade, but you didn't pass some academic task, and you were told that if you didn't pass that task, you were going to be held back. And so then you got so much anxiety, so much self-shame, so much self-loathing. You're going to lose your friends, especially horrible for young girls.
Yeah.
All right, that you put so much pressure on yourself because nobody could help you. And then through all that stress, which was clinically dangerous,
Yeah.
the solution presented itself and you passed the academic task. And that has happened so many times that now is high school juniors, 16 to 18, it's just normal for you. And they all looked at me. I asked them this privately. How did you know? I said, because I went through the same thing. So what I noticed, people that went through that, when it came time for them to go into the body paragraphs and the teacher was teaching them how to do certain things, and she spent so little time on spelling and grammar and went from horrendous to clean at the graduate level, I knew that internal process would take part. Yeah, I didn't ask any of this beforehand, but I knew that the students who met that, this is what was going to happen. And that's how I was able to get such tremendous results.
Now you took their group proved how your word failures. Then what did you do?
Well, when I presented that in New York City in 2006, the teachers came back to me and they said, okay, you solved it for the elite, the most motivated of the most intelligent. What about the typical students? Will this work for them? And I said, absolutely not. They cannot take the strain of this amount of work, of being thrown constantly different subject matters at them. They don't have the motivation. So then I was told to go and fix this for everybody. Well, that's when that took me years. So then I came back in 2014, 8 years later, and I've been teaching New York City public school teachers every year ever since. And what I found out is if I'm going to get these kids to do anything, I have to do two additional things. I have to focus on their speciality. That's their area of extreme interest and ability. And here's the second thing. You can't ask a dyslexic to answer a question like this from the general to the specific. You can't ask them, for example, what effect did Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s? It's like asking us to grab fog. There's nothing there. We have to flip that and ask a specific to a general question. This is what all the top dyslexic professors I spoke to, and when I asked, they told me. And what they said was, if you ask a question like, what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? You look it up, you get an answer. That answer turns into a question, which turns into another answer. You keep doing that. And here's why. If you ask and this is so important for your listeners to understand, if you ask a dyslexic student in their speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability, do they have ideas flying around their head at light speed, but with little or no organization? They're going to say yes. If you ask yes. But here's the key point. What we have to do then is to force the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Okay? So it's about writing, not reading. So if you were to go and ask your brother, what's your speciality? That's something I typically ask. It's a Saturday morning. You can go anywhere you want, do whatever you want. What would that be? That's the speciality. And you'll find out that we really just want to play in that little area. We step outside of that, and the kids' motivation, the most motivated kids are down 50%. Most kids are down 80%. Yeah, that was the key thing that I found. So during the intervention period, during the intervention period, we focused on what the kids are really interested in. And people ask, well, how successful is this? I'm writing a book on this example. It's called Literacy and Literacy and Reading Dyslexia Turnaround. All right. So what it's about Kimberly, and I feel permission to tell her story, was homeschooling her 10-year-old son, Reed. Reed was his mom just spent $700 to get him and his siblings tested by the state of Ohio. Reed was halfway through 5th grade. He was reading and writing as if he was at the beginning of 3rd grade, so about a year and a half behind. If he was in a public school, they would expect, according to his test instrument, to increase by 1.86 points for the rest of the school year. But that didn't happen. He increased by 20 points. 11 times. Not double, not triple, 11 times more. And here's why this is so important. His friends came to him over summer break, and they said, Reed, for social reasons, we want you to come to public school with us, to be with us. If he tried that in January, he would have been placed in special education away from his friends. He would have been a very frustrated kid. But his mom did, in an hour and a half a week, 3 half-hour sessions typically. I worked with her for half an hour a week to show her the process. She did what parents dreamed of. She got Reed a little bit above grade level. So Reed entered 6th grade. He's in mainstream gen ed classes, and he's doing just fine.
Wow.
Okay? That's how powerful this is.
Like they teaching is out to their days or contraries over deal no, no, you were just talking about boy in how did you meet them?
Well, I did. I was doing ads on Facebook for a while, and that's how I met Kimberly. And I found that it wasn't the best way of getting to know people. Facebook's expensive, so now what I've done is I'm going on a lot of podcasts. Like today, I'm doing 3 podcasts. Last month we met on Podmatch, which is the largest connector of podcast hosts and podcasters in the world. There's about 4,800 guests on Podmatch. Last month, I was ranked number 1.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm doing that where New York State just tried to reform its entire system. We are the highest tax state in the country. Sorry, California, we beat you in high taxes. You can't touch us. We spend more per kid than anybody. We're trying to reform that kindergarten through 5th grade, basically 5 through 10-year-olds. And the state spent an entire year. They came up they took the top 100 people, created a task force, and then they found out when they tried to implement it this year, they can't afford it using traditional methods. So, because again, let me give you an example with the traditional methods. If you're rich, you're going to use an Orton-Gillingham multi-sensory structured language approach. Dr. Orton, the first school using that approach is called the Gowell School in Western New York. Next year, it celebrates its 100th anniversary.
Wow.
It's $86,000 a year to live there. If you get the scholarship, it's $60,000 a year. And these schools generally need 4 to 5 years. All right. It's the methods, the traditional methods just aren't affordable. So what I'm just showing here, again, this is Overcoming Dyslexia Second Edition, the top book in my field. I'm again showing the brain scans. If you look
Yeah.
at that overactive front part of the brain, let's use that. Kimberly is a very gifted homeschooling mother, but she
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
a professional teacher. In my state, they have a 4-year undergraduate degree, and
Yeah.
then they have a 2-year master's degree. And normally they got a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Kimberly 11x'd that system in an hour and a half a week. Okay.
Yeah.
So now here's a question I get all the time. People keep saying, well, the kid only really wants to work in their specialty. That's true. Schools want us to become well-rounded before we specialize in the advanced college or grad school. Will the kid do the work? And what I tell them is once the child's at grade level, I'll give you Reed's example. He threw a minor fit in math because his teacher likes having students write, and he's a little slower than everybody else. He says, I don't want to write in math class. Well, you're dealing with a well-raised child, but as you know, and when they're 10, 11, they try to press the boundaries. What can I get away with? And so what do? You do the same thing you've been doing with them since they were 2. All right. You put up boundaries, and we had a little talk with Reed, and we said, Reed, you can do this now. You're going to do this now. And he bucked a little bit, but once he knew that his mom was ironclad that he was going to do it, he's doing it. Also, came up with an ingenious way to get kids to do their work. All right. This is
Yeah.
the family finds this amusing even years later, but the kids, they never look back at it with fond memories. So what I do is when we're doing the basic sentences, okay, when I'm showing them how to write, just the most simple sentences, I ask for 10 things they really like and 10 things they really don't like. For Reed, the one chore he absolutely hates, loathes, can't stand is cleaning out the rabbit cages, with the urine and the feces. He hates it. So I said, okay, Reed, if you're not going to do your work, the other evil thing I say is, as we go through this, do you want me to treat you like a big kid or like a little baby? And I make the little baby one so horrible they don't want anything to do with it. I said, okay, if you ever not do your work according to your mom, then she can excuse it any time. But if she says you're not doing the work and she didn't excuse it, then we're going to, if it's real bad, I'm going to have you clean out the rabbit cages. Okay. All right. So I just simply said, Reed, do you want to clean out the rabbit cages? No, I don't want to do that. Okay. So you're going to. I had an issue with him doing
Right.
work when we're going through the program. And his mom said, okay, I'm not cleaning out the rabbit cages. I'm making them really nasty. And I said, Reed, here's what's going to happen. Your mom's going to videotape you cleaning out the rabbit cages. We maybe invite your friends over and we're going to have a great laugh. Or you can do your work. Please don't do your work. I want a good laugh. He just didn't speak. I've got another kid who absolutely, the thing he can't stand is putting clothes away. He's 9. His mother was having some issues trying to stretch out the session a little bit. He was capable, but he was able to bamboozle her into not doing more than she said at a minimum. All right. And I said, I know exactly what you're doing because I was 9 once and I know exactly what you're doing. I said, that happens again. You're going to put away clothes for a half an hour. Then your older sister's going to take them, mess them up. You're going to have to fold them and put them away again. Sound like fun? He's like smiling. I said, are you going to do your work now? Are you going to fight your mom anymore? I haven't had another issue with him.
Nice. Okay. take us back to your childhood. What were you doing? And how did your parents deal with you? Obviously, you were never diagnosed until much later. So take us back to your childhood.
Well, I was held back for a year. And then I was put in special education in third grade. And I really wasn't properly diagnosed until my junior year of high school, when just by happenstance, a New York State distinguished professor in psychology retired and had an office 400 feet from my university. Okay. So, and she just happened to give me a good valuation then. So I was put in there. So I started in third grade. I was pulled out of almost every class and put in with the special kids, which wasn't a fit for me. All right. I eventually forced my way out for history by going to the school board member across the street. And I was told I was going to flunk out. I couldn't take notes, obviously. I remembered everything the teacher said, and I got hundreds in all his tests. I found ways for very short periods of time to force my ability to read. And then it left me with massive migraines later that I just suffered. All right. So when New York State wanted to find out what was going on, when I went to the education department, this was when I was in my later 20s. Okay. So what happened is they said they wanted a New York State distinguished professor in psychology to do the evaluation. They're top ranked. In Western New York, there were two. That's it. The one who gave, her name was Dr. Lichka, happened to give me the one a few years beforehand. She said she would do it. And she says, I have the ability, and it's a 5-page documentation I share with people if they want. I can go from first grade reading and writing ability, basically a 6-year-old, up to above average reading and writing of grad students, and then back down again. It's a system that I turned on, that I developed over the years. And it's just not fun using. All right. So I eventually got out of special ed for everything in ninth grade. And I did well enough to go to college, but it was always just, how do I, for this test, jump my reading and writing level up to something I can pass? I did very well on the multiple choice, like extraordinarily well. But the essays, I just always just took a 0.
Yeah.
Because and then the papers, people find this interesting. I told the professor I'm going to plagiarize the writing style of this paper. Now, you tell a professor plagiarism, and they go crazy. And he said, what do you mean? I said, okay, the paper you want me to write is on the Civil War. The paper I'm plagiarizing from is the United States Civil War, 80 years beforehand. And he looked at me and said, these have absolutely nothing to do with each other. You're not taking anything. Your arguments are nothing with that Civil War paper's taking. I said, yes, I'm taking the structure. I'm plagiarizing the writing of this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. And he looked at me and said, he said, you're right. But there's nothing wrong with plagiarizing a structure style. It's the content where he's like, I have never seen anybody do this. He said, you do realize your content is an A, but your writing is so bad, I have to put a D on this. I said, oh, you're being nice to me. He's like, excuse me? I said, most professors would just chuck an F at it because it's so horrendously bad. even after I lived in the writing center for 2 weeks trying to fix this mess. He's just like, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. I've never heard of anything like this. So when it came time for me to develop new ideas, I'm used to doing this all the time for me. And now, especially with the artificial intelligence that came out, when ChatGPT came out with its Pro series for $200 a month last December of 2024, I bought it that day. And I haven't looked back. It has been a godsend for me and for other dyslexics.
Yeah.
And now what I'm finding, here's what's scary to people. All these kids can't find jobs now. The CEO of Anthropic thinks that in 5 years, half the college jobs for new kids are going to be gone. But dyslexics have this huge advantage. So what I do is I teach from a book called The Craft of Research. It was designed for PhD students from the University of Chicago who couldn't write their dissertations in 95. Professors want kids to do this. It's based on 3 things. And sorry, the 5th edition is now down to like high school kids. They want context, get everybody on the same page, state a problem, and then come up with a solution where you actually learn something original. So I do 9 and 10-year-olds context. That's what I did with Reed. Problem is that is now a senior year of high school for 18-year-olds, college level. Reed has started doing that. Solution is something brand new, how to come up with something completely original. So you write a paper on Romeo and Juliet, it's completely original. So that's what I teach my kids.
Neat.
Well, when they go to college, here's why this is so important. I had a student contact me last year. He hates artificial intelligence. His boss loved it. And he said, I am not going to allow you to spend 2 hours doing a draft the old way when AI can do it in 10 minutes. So he calls me up in a panic. He's like, I don't know how to do this artificial intelligence stuff. I said, you've been trained in the craft of research. Go to the AI, talk to it, type with it. I don't care. Figure out context. You've practiced this for 4 years. So he goes, he comes back. A couple of days later, I did that. I said, go do it with problem. He comes back a couple of days later. I hate this. I said, welcome to the adult world.
Yeah.
All right. And I said, go do solution. So he comes back, he hands in a 5-paragraph essay. Other of his peers are turning in these big papers. The boss does not want to flip through 10, 20 pages of stuff with nothing that can add value. The purpose of the task was to see if any of the new employees can help the company out. Nothing, get to he picked something very minor that the boss said, we never took the time to solve this. He solved it. Okay? Within a week, he's training his peers on AI. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I guess who's probably keeping his job? Guess who's probably losing it? If you know the craft of research, you can work with AI.
Yeah.
I've shown you how to prompt engineer your brain.
Yeah. Well, they are is amazing. And I love seeing AI used by people who can use the tools focus and really benefit from it. That is wonderful. So tell us now what next year or the next couple of years look like for you igen alla gör teaching and first what are you hoping to see?
Well, what I'm doing is I was trying to figure out how can I help more people, but the economics had to work. So let me give you an example. The vast majority of my best um, clients with the biggest results are lower middle class families. Okay. The kids know that it's going to really stretch their families to send them on to higher education.
Yeah.
And they know that they don't have a multi-million dollar trust fund to pay them for the rest of their lives. So they have to work. So my most successful case, I just want people to know, I never saw this before. I will never see this again. But this is how successful this could be. This is the book that Casey wanted. It's called The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, one of our more popular presidents in the United States.
Yeah.
All 900 pages of it. This won the Pulitzer. This book, when you ask teachers, they'll say 16 to 18-year-olds, college professors will say 18-year-olds. Casey was 10, reading as if she was 7. And I give her this monster, all 900 pages. She said she wanted to do reading first. I always do writing first because if you can write it, you can read it. I said, okay,
Yeah.
Casey. I modified my approach a little bit. I said, you're not going to do the work. And I just knew she wasn't. Man, was I wrong. She's in her room 2 to 3 hours a night, 6 to 7 nights a week during the school year. And then over the summer, she was doing it like all day in her room, just going through a very simple process I gave her. 6 months later, she's reading that entire book. You could go like this and say any page, that word, and she will tell you the dictionary definition exactly. All right. She jumped 8 grade levels in 6 months. I worked with her for 15 minutes a week because that's what her family could afford. And that was my most successful. Yeah. So she goes into 6th grade. She's 11. For the next couple of years until 8th grade, until she's 13, I then work with her on advanced writing. She was ready for college at 13.
My God.
Right.
Wow.
But how do I can't replicate, I can't replicate myself. So what we've done is we've decided that number one, what I found out is the only way most families can afford any effective dyslexia remediation is for the parents to teach their kids themselves. Okay. So I was going through a book. This is the popular business book on how to solve things. All right. It's called the $100 million. He's just called the $100 million guy. He gave a platform that he uses for people to go and put their content online. So what I've done is I've done that. And what that means is, so typically what we do with parents is we have all the content online. I initially meet with you and your child, and I ask them what their speciality is because parents said that's the one thing they really have difficulty with. I find out, I get an audio book, I get a book that they're interested in, usually a couple of grade levels ahead of where they want to be, where they are, so they can grow into it. And then the awesome thing is how to convince the child to do the work. And when I talk to them, I ask them that question I told you about. And they look around, how did you know? And I said, well, you think you're the only one? Some of them think I literally had cameras watching them. Nobody knows that about me. I said, well, I've kind of been working on this since 10 years before you were born professionally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I went through what you're going through. And by the way, my dyslexia is worse than yours. Can't be. I send them over my 5-page neuropsych from Dr. Olichka. They look at it. Wow. Okay. Now they want to do this. And then I just talked to the parents, and the parents have a concern. Well, we're busy. We have all this stuff. I said, yeah, the sessions run. We put them in for 10, 15-minute sessions. And they say, well, with Reed, you got it done in 6 months. I said, Kimberly did get it done in about 6 months. If the child is older than Reed significantly, they pick it up a lot faster. If they're younger, it takes longer. Because the thing about my approach is the older you are, the quicker you pick it up. Exact opposite of the traditional approach. And I said, Reed was an example. You may get done quicker. It may take you more time, but it got done. And we can do it at an affordable price because I have everything online. And then we have a weekly webinar to answer your questions. Please submit them by Saturday night.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have the support you need on a weekly basis. And parents ask, this will surprise them, generally the same questions. All right. And we make sure we stay in the webinar until we answer all your questions. All right. And then it's just a matter of it's a grind. But at 10 to 15-minute sessions that most parents do, they can fit it in their schedule. And one told me, this took 2 years, 3 times longer than we thought because we just didn't have the time that we thought. I said, okay. The kid's name, I'm going to have to change. I'm changing it to protect his identity. I'm going to call him Steve. How's Steve doing? Well, he's out of special education. He's in gen ed classes with his friends. And his grade point, he's getting B minuses. And I said, okay. How does that make you feel? They said, well, it's not quite like a private school. I said, yes. To give you an example, the Windward School in Upper East Side of Manhattan, New York City, the wealthiest area of the Eastern Seaboard. They take 4 to 5 years at $75,000 a year, but they're 98% successful. I said, exactly. He's a B minus student for now. He can work on improving that, but this costs you, a fraction of what a year at that school cost.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we're happy with the results. Thank you for telling us what we need to keep working on, because they decided to leave me at that point. I said, okay, that's fine. Here's what to work on. Other ones stayed with me. Like Reed, I showed him how to do 5th grade, and now he's working on high school senior, 18-year-old writing for body paragraphs. All right. And for those students, what they find is they go way ahead of their classmates. So in those paragraphs, I say, we're going to use 2 warrants. And even parents with master's degrees say, what's a warrant? Well, it's from the craft of research, and it tells you how to take, instead of just writing facts, and a quote is a fact, okay? Instead of just writing facts, it shows you how to analyze them at an advanced graduate level. And yes, I'm showing that to a 10-year-old. And it's working. And Reed's really good at it. Now, how long is it going to take him to start writing those paragraphs proficiently? 2 quotes and 2 warrants and some other discussion elements? Probably a couple of years. But then he'll have the paragraph writing ability of a high school senior / college student. His mom said at that point, he's going to be at the top of the mountain, and then he's going to have to walk down to learn everything else he needs. That's a lot easier than trying to climb up.
Yeah. Yes. But your work is truly, really remarkable. Well, unfortunately, time is almost up. So, big forward we go. What you impart some words of wisdom to parents, and also share how people can get in touch with you.
Well, for the parents, the first thing I would just recommend is basically three things. For the intervention period, until your child's reading at grade level or above, reading and writing, find out what their speciality is, get their audio book and then their normal book, the same thing, and focus on the specific to the general, and then word analysis followed by articulation. You do that, they'll be fine. If you want to know more about this, you can just go to dyslexiaclasses.com. That's with an S, dyslexiaclasses.com, plural with an S, dyslexiaclasses.com. And there's a button there that says download free guide. Just click on that, answer a few questions, and you'll get our 3 reasons book, the 3 reasons your child's having trouble in school due to dyslexia. And then you can set up an appointment with me for a half an hour. I help you find your child's speciality, and I talk to them and say, is this how you really want to overcome your reading and writing concerns? And we work, and the vast majority of them say yes. And then I talk to the parents how we can show them how we can do this affordably and to make this work. And that's it.
There is giving so many cares and parents hope. Thank you not only for your time today, but for helping all the people that you are incredible. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're ready to explore your own healing journey or intuitive gifts, I'd love to work with you. I offer psychic medium readings, energy healing sessions, and intuitive development guidance at shariroberts.org. And if you're not quite ready for a session, but want to be a part of the conversation in a supportive community, join my private Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. This is Shari Leigh Roberts. Until next time, remember, you're never alone.